Welcome to Greater Good Radio Hawaii, where leaders inspire leaders. Greater Good Radio Hawaii is dedicated to social entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Evan Leong, and with me is my co-host, Carrie Leong.
Today's guest is Keli'i Akina, President and CEO of Youth for Christ. He's the founder and president of the Center for Tomorrow's Leaders, the premier leadership development program for high schoolers. Keli'i has been instrumental in raising over $1.7 million for victims of the September 11 tragedy. Please welcome to Greater Good Radio, President and CEO of Youth for Christ, Keli'i Akina. Welcome to our show, Keli'i.
Carrie, I'm delighted to be here, and Evan, just a real treat to be with two of my favorite people.
Can you share more with our listeners about Hawaii Youth for Christ?
Oh, I'd be glad to. This organization has been around for well over 50 years here in the islands. Back in World War II, servicemen and others who started radio stations, such as, remember the old KAIM, the Fish Today? They also started this program, and it's played a major role in helping young people over the last several decades here in the islands.
And then how did the Center for Tomorrow's Leaders come about then?
Well, that's one of our organizations. Youth for Christ Hawaii consists of a handful of them. Let me run down them, and then I'll get to the Center for Tomorrow's Leaders. The first is Campus Life. A lot of people may know what Campus Life is because it operates positive living clubs on the different school campuses. Right now, it's the largest inter-school club movement on Oahu. Secondly, we have an organization called the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and that reaches out to coaches and athletes, helping them to build character and sportsmanship. We also have a division that provides resources for parents, helping them to raise their children, get them off of drugs, alcohol, and other types of dangerous behaviors. But you just asked me about Center for Tomorrow's Leaders. Well, that's a very special program to my wife and myself personally, and you know Patty, you've met her. Because about 5 years ago, we each felt the need to do a little more with young people in terms of raising up leaders in Hawaii who would love our land and who would come back to it. And so we started the Center for Tomorrow's Leaders to help identify some of the top future leaders and help give them the best available training that they could get.
And you were inspired to start this organization from the Pacific Century Fellows, right?
That's part of my inspiration, but I had already, Patty and I had already been planning the Center for Tomorrow's Leaders when a wonderful opportunity came about, thanks to the man who is our current mayor, Mufi Hanneman, and I know that you two are familiar with this as well because you're part of it, the Pacific Century Fellows. And so back in 2002, when we were actually starting the Center for Tomorrow's Leaders, I had the wonderful privilege of going through the Pacific Century Fellows, which in many ways functions on an adult level in the way that we function with teenagers.
And why do you feel that there was a need and an opportunity to develop this program for high schoolers?
Well, that's a great question. I think a general answer would be this. If you take a look at all of the problems that society is facing, the answer is always leadership. Sometimes the cause of the problem is leadership, but the solution to our problems is leadership. And when we look around at the numerous difficulties that we face today as an island, our economy, social problems, homelessness, I could go on and on with that. We see a desperate need for leaders who are founded on character, who have competence, and who care about the islands. And it's because of that need that we felt it's important to get started as early as possible. And since we work with young people already, we thought, well, why not develop a program that will identify some of the most talented, expose them to leaders in the state, give them a vision and a heart for the islands, and challenge them to come back and make a difference.
So for somebody not familiar with Center for Tomorrow's Leaders, can you maybe give a brief example of what, people can expect from it?
Sure. The Center for Tomorrow's Leaders, every year, and now it's going into its 5th year as we record this, every year looks for a class of about 20 to 25 exceptional juniors and seniors in high school. We look for students who are well qualified academically, who are active in extracurricular activities, who've demonstrated some kind of leadership potential already. We throw the net out broadly. We send out information to school principals and counselors, to community organizations, to churches, collect nominations, and then from those nominations, we conduct interviews, the students fill out applications, and we choose the class of 20. And in a 9-month program, actually it's about 12 months if we take the tail end and the front end, but in about a 9-month systematic program, the young people, we call them fellows, in the Center for Tomorrow's Leaders are able to experience, number one, exceptional access to gatekeepers today. For example, the fellows in the Center for Tomorrow's Leaders during the first 4 years had access to over 100 local leaders as well as international leaders in Hawaii. These have included consuls general, CEOs of the largest corporations in Hawaii, the heads of the Democratic and Republican Party, the governor, the lieutenant governor, the mayor, legislators, business people, all kinds of interesting people, those who are entrepreneurs and have started chains in Hawaii, and financial people and so forth. So the first thing is we give them access to these people. They get to go into boardrooms. They get to go into government chambers and spend an entire hour to an hour and a half carrying on what we call a Socratic Dialogue with these leaders. So we train these young people to ask the leaders questions, ask them their values, get into their minds. You know, a lot of times those leaders say to us, meeting with the Center for Tomorrow's Leaders is the first opportunity they've had to really systematically tell their story about leadership. So I've been talking quite a bit now, but that's just, if you wanted to interject, that'd be fine. That's the first aspect of their training. The second aspect would be training and learning their talents and their gifts and their abilities. The third aspect is mentoring. We assign them mentors from the business community. And the fourth and final aspect is this great camaraderie that they experience with each other. Each class becomes very close to each other, and they become a growing network. As I mentioned before, we're going into the 5th year, and it's exciting to think of where that's going to go as time goes on.
Thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned for more on Greater Good Radio.